Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get started with the Traffic Commission meeting for November 12th. So I'm calling the meeting to order, and the first order of business is the minutes of the previous meeting, the September 2024 meeting.
I would like to make a motion to accept the September minutes as published.
Seconded.
So there's been a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. So you'll see on the agenda that the next item is the action agenda. I want to make a quick move on that. At the tail end, there's an additional business where we would get a brief update from our RTA bus routes and bus stops. And I'm asking that we do that now, just spend a few minutes. It's not a long update, just to keep people in the loop on what's happening. Laura, would you like to say a few words? Check to see if the, oops, oh. Okay, hold on just a second, we'll get you one.
Thank you. Okay, good afternoon. My name is Lori Alskog. I'm with the South Central Transit Authority. We operate the Red Rose Transit Authority buses here in Lancaster County. On Monday, we started a new route and schedule for all of our routes within the county. That was following a year-long process of our transit development plan, where we had lots of public input about the route changes and the schedule changes. And so this is the first phase of implementation of that plan. So as I said, it started on Monday morning. First runs out 5 a.m., I think, were the first runs. So part of that process, there are routes within the city that were changed. Everything now is on our website, all the route information. I'll get to the computer things right now. So part of that obviously is changing some of the routes. We would have to, and they're realigned, we would have to look at new bus stop locations. And then if a route is no longer run on a street, we would be removing those bus stops. So that is something that we have a list of them, but have not formally submitted to the Traffic Commission. We were late in getting those done and finalized. We did have a meeting with some people from Public Works last week about a few of the stop changes, and coordinated with the police to have no parking signs put up and temporary bus stop signs there. And we will work with Cindy and her staff, Steve and your staff, to formally submit them to the Traffic Commission.
Thank you very much for this update. What will people in the general public right-of-way start to see, and over what kind of a period of time before everything's getting settled?
We are working on that. Like I said, we went through 6 or 7 in the city. Those are the ones that were new stops, and then removing the old stops. We wanted to make sure, like I said, this started on Monday. There have been some glitches, computer glitches mainly. So if anybody is trying to use the system, the app wasn't showing the details, so it wasn't showing the routes, and some of the stops wouldn't have been updated. So we found that there's an update to the app, that the MyAvail app, the Bus Finder app, that resetting that network, that we hope that that's figured out, and that we have been receiving comments, some positive comments, negative comments as well, that some places that we might not be providing service now, we might change the route. So that is something that we're looking at, because there are some people that need service there. It's mainly around the changing of the Park City routes, going from 3 routes that would run to Park City, excuse me, to just one route, but more frequently and I think a longer time span. So
people should just keep their eyes peeled on the website as things change. Is it
Yeah.
likely that you will be able to give another update in January at the next traffic commission meeting, or?
yes, definitely by then, we should have this all worked out, but this first week, this is the first time I've been going through it, and and Dino can tell you every history part if you want to know, but this is the most complex and largest route and schedule change that Red Rose Transit has done in 40 years. So the devil's in the details, and so we're finding out, we had a case in point that a new route over near Euclid and Union, and there was a person standing there at a stop that they confirmed with me, yes, that's going to be a new stop. We established it with the city. Well, the driver was running the old route, so they missed that person. So our director of operations talked to that driver, clarified it, and now she has the correct route, and this person will not be missed, or he will be getting a personal ride to and from work tomorrow. So things like that, just the driver was thinking it went up this way, even though we've had driver training, so there was just some errors like that.
Well, we certainly applaud the large-scale revisioning of how the route system works. We know that there's a lot of glitches involved in it. We appreciate the update, and we look forward to you being able to give a better update in January. Are there any questions from the commission for Laura?
I'll just clarify that we, we did work through some of the 5 or 6 locations that were new stops within the city, and we requested that our RTA provide us, I guess obviously seeing how this goes, if any of those need to change for any reason, but then also providing us a list of stops that could be removed, that
Yes.
are no longer being used. So that's what the request at the January Traffic Commission meeting would be then, to formalize those bus stop locations and deletion of the old bus stops.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for the report out. It's not a question and answer session in the conventional sense. We look forward to a more complete update. in
Yes.
January.
Yes, I will provide that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lauren. Okay, and the next item is old business. Considering the request of the new school Montessori to add a load zone at 24 North Lime Street. It's item 39-2024.
Hello,
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Very good, thanks.
Good.
Today, I guess we're giving you an update on, or you're giving us partly an update of what research you've done, and then we're giving you an update on some research we've done as well.
Okay. The research that was asked of us, that was completed in April of 2023, I believe, was to contact the parking lot behind us, which is privately owned, to ask permission or if they would be interested in having us use their lot at your request. And Jason Reed, who is new to our school and took over for Day Waters, he made contact again last week, and the parking lot is not interested in doing that. Jason can confirm.
Please.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. I made contact with Alpa Yosemite, who were the one who owned the property right behind 24 North Lime Street. They are not interested just because of the logistics standpoint, in and out of the parking lot during our drop-off morning hours, especially since they lease those parking spaces to lawyers who go to the courthouse and whatnot. So for them, it would be kind of tricky, the times of drop-off. So they did said, as much as they would love to, unfortunately, they are not able to do so at this time just because of if someone is late to a court hearing or someone is late to an appointment, they don't want that to be an impediment for them getting to where they need to get early in the morning access. So unfortunately, the parking lot in the back that is owned by Apple Yours and Seed is not available for us at 24 North Lime.
Well, we very much appreciate that you did a valiant effort to try again and see what might be able to be negotiated. And
Correct.
we understand that it's difficult and often not works to your advantage. Cindy, did we do further review of the situation? If I remember correctly, we gave a temporary.
Yes, so, yeah, Ben can provide an update on, just what, he reviewed.
Okay. Ben Hogan, one of our staff in Public Right of Way.
Yes, good afternoon, Commission. Ben Hogan, Public Works Engineer for City of Lancaster. So we reviewed this location, did some observations during student drop-off and pickup. What we had come to realize is they are currently renting one space, the one that's just to the right of the driveway there, and placing cones in front of the driveway entrance to allow parents to drop off in front of that driveway. Another issue we observed is that parents often park in the no parking area right up to the crosswalk, obstructing pedestrian visibility. So what our recommendation is to do create a loading zone that extends one space before the driveway, one space after. That's 2 legal parking spaces, 3 if you count the space in front of their driveway for students to be dropped off. In terms of pros and cons, that would leave a 72-foot long loading zone for access during morning and evening. We considered additional improvements as well that you see on the sketch that's in your meeting packet, blocking off that no parking area with pavement markings and delineators, and some additional pavement markings to enhance pedestrian visibility there. And the only con of the situation would be that we would lose 2 metered parking spaces from LPA.
Did you reach out to LPA to get their opinion on whether that's
No, we have not reached out yet.
okay?
And again, I guess this was, I asked Ben to provide, the information, and it would be up to the commission then to determine how we would want to proceed. Obviously, LPA can also weigh in at this time if they'd like, as they are in attendance.
Since I'm here.
That's great.
Hello.
Great timing.
That's why I sit in the back. Good afternoon, Larry Cohen, Parking Authority. I would say if it were approved, there'd be loading and unloading time parameters for that. So it could be a loading zone between whatever hours are deemed appropriate for the school in the morning hours and then in the afternoon hours, if it's not deemed that the loading zone's required for the entire day or 24-hour period.
Can I interject one question? And maybe this is a question for Ben.
Can you come to the
Yes.
microphone?
According to the way we believe the parking is in front, it's really one space, one paid parking space, because there's a sign that says no parking from basically right where that, it's kind of a funny picture if you go take it, but right where it says pay here to park at the kiosk, that sign right there above it says you're not allowed to park there in front of that. And so there's really only one metered spot that's from that no parking sign to the driveway.
Can I just clarify for you?
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
So we are looking at this space in front and then this space behind as well. So you get one spot in front
I
of the
didn't realize
driveway
that one.
and then one additional space here.
Okay, I understand now.
So
Thank
just
you.
for our clarification, Ben, that's on either side of the driveway?
I
Correct,
understand now,
yes.
yes.
Okay. Are there any questions from members of the commission?
Question, maybe comment, not quite sure, maybe one of each. My biggest concern is the blocking of that driveway. That is an existing curb cutout that exists at that driveway. Any blocking of that driveway is an ordinance violation. You cannot block that. That's my concern with that. I'm all about trying to get you the parking spaces that you need, but that driveway cannot be blocked.
It's never blocked, it's a moving car line, like, it's never blocked by
It's
a,
not allowed to be there. Even
Wow.
temporarily stop vehicles, it's very clear in ordinance. And that's just not allowed to be. So what's the resolution to that? The resolution to that is that curb cut is removed and a standard size curb be put in. I don't know whose expense that would be, but if that's a standard curb, that now gives you appropriate parking spaces. Then we can do that. Even put the cones out and temporarily block, you're albeit temporarily violating city ordinance. And unfortunately, both the parking authority and my staff, we cite people appropriately when they do those things. And what we don't want to do is create an environment of inequity, where Joe Q. citizen is going to get a ticket, any parents dropping off would also get a ticket. And again, I don't know whose cost that would be. Is that on the school? I don't know that the city would want to absorb that cost, but if that regular height curb is put in, we don't have a discussion anymore. Now you have your load zone and you're good.
So, and just for clarification, so I understand it, so that the public understands, what you're suggesting is that where the current driveway is, that would be a conventional curb and not a driveway.
Correct. If it's a conventional curb, the curb cutout no longer exists, therefore it's no longer accessible and be considered a driveway. As it sits right now, it's absolutely considered a driveway. If you look on your monitors, that's a current Google view of what you're looking at. That gets turned into a traditional curb, and then you have X amount of feet. And Ben, do you have any idea? I'm guessing you're probably talking in the neighborhood of 50 feet if you go to the left-hand side of that curb, guessing. And 72 in and of itself, that's an extraordinarily long load zone.
Yeah, so 72 would be the space before the curb cut and the space after. If we were just to do the space to your right here, that would be 20 feet. The space just to the left would be 20 feet.
Right.
So, sir, and the driveway is part of the Montessori property?
yes.
So the cost and everything related to making that curb change would unfortunately be to the school's expense, but it would give you the benefit of the larger loading zone. Are there other comments or questions from other members of the commission?
And then, Mr. Cohen, can I assume then if the school, would the school then have to rent that spot that currently exists, that singular spot?
Well, right now, we can't.
The only reason I asked is because that's very similar to what the Marriott does with their load zone. There used to be parking spaces there, they yearly rent those spaces out. So
Right.
let's say an established load zone. And maybe I'm
I
putting you on the
I feel
spot.
like
If I
that's
am,
a
I
different
apologize.
situation, and that's exclusively
yeah,
for their,
I would say for the school, as I just said before, if they just needed that loading zone for a particular hour and a half in the morning and an hour and a half in the afternoon to attend to their business, then that probably wouldn't warrant a situation similar to the Marriott, because the Marriott has 24/7 access to those spaces.
And you wouldn't be opposed to that signage being placed in the area of that kiosk, designating that as a load zone during appropriate times.
Correct. I think that's fair. I think that's a reasonable accommodation.
Okay.
That, what would the hours be for morning and afternoon loading?
Based on the data that was given, I can tell you that roughly 7:30 to 9 a.m.
Well, that's free parking time anyhow,
and
so,
11:45 until 6 p.m.
oh,
Well, I lied, maybe 2:45 to 6.
what's it,
Because there's an 11:45 to noon dismissal for 4 students, and I think one existing space would take care of that. But then the larger time frame is 2:45 until 6 p.m. That's the bulk of the students.
Is that correct?
That's what
Is
I'm,
a
I mean,
3-hour
there's
time
a-
period
I
needed
think-
in the afternoon?
It's probably not needed till 6.
Okay.
However, I have to express my, I'm a little nervous to have hours on there because we've had a lot of trouble with people parking, not only,
Well, we need
Yeah.
hours for enforcement
totally agree.
to make sure that they are open when they need to be open as
And
well.
I'm totally in support of
Yeah.
opening them whenever. I guess I'm wondering what happens when someone's parked there and it's 2:30 and now,
I'm sorry, would you be able to speak towards
Sorry.
the,
what do I guess my angst might be, like, suppose someone parks there at 2:30, which has happened, and we've worked around it, but it's not optimal. So I'm just worried that limiting the hours by a lot, like, I would prefer to do it like loading zone school days between X and Y, like 7:30 to 4 PM, because after 4, they can make do with less,
I'm trying to,
they can make do with less.
yeah, I'm trying to do it for you so you wouldn't have to incur expense to do it versus having it for the.
I appreciate that. I also know that this is very frustrating to me. I have to be very honest. I haven't slept in 2 days because I cannot believe that we opened a childcare in the city where we were begged to do so. And now I'm literally having to have this conversation and bring proof of who I talked to get a safe drop-off zone.
I think we're similarly frustrated that one would go that far as well, but we need to make sure that it is in fact safe. You're
I
invited.
totally agree.
Because
I
we all
totally
want,
agree.
we all want the best things to happen here in the city, but they need to happen legally, safely, and according to the ordinances.
So I do have a question, going back. So the 2 spaces will be before and after the curve, if I'm understanding correctly?
that's a suggestion.
That's a suggestion.
By Ben's evaluation, correct.
Okay, so based on Ben's evaluation, what will there be a need to cover the curve, the driveway, if we are only going to use the first, the before and after?
Understand that there's not.
There's not.
There's absolutely unequivocally no need for you to do that.
Okay,
Maybe I wasn't clear. My suggestion would be extend that, make that a real curve. I'm going to plain talk, make it a real curve.
make a real curve, okay.
Now it's a real curve. That load zone now exists for your use. If we do that, we then don't have to eliminate a parking space on a block where there's extraordinarily limited parking already.
Understood.
Again, I'm not saying you have to do that, but it keeps everything close to your school at that point, if you do that. And again, I'm not saying you're required, you must. To me, while it's the more expensive endeavor, to me, I think it's the easiest. From a safety standpoint, it keeps all your parents and students cordoned into one area, as opposed to, okay, now there's a pickup. It's kind of broken down, delineated because of the space break.
Understood. I think I'll go back, Robert and I will obviously discuss based on this decision this afternoon. We will discuss what would be the best option for us, obviously, in regards of whatever is decided this afternoon. But either way, we are very appreciative, just the opportunity of doing so.
I guess I'd like to just add, there is some precedent in the city for loading zones that have been identified in front of depressed curves. I know this isn't necessarily, obviously per the ordinance, parking in front of a driveway is not allowed. But I would say that this is not unprecedented. I guess my question is if we are, so obviously as part of the sketch that Ben identified, it included putting delineators in the area where it is currently no parking, it's posted for no parking. Do you feel like, how many spaces, I guess, are you feeling is necessary for your operation?
I mean, I think in a perfect world, right now, what we're dealing with is tight. So I understand why he, as an engineer, would say they need a little more length because we can get 3 cars in there pretty well. But if the person is not the best driver, then maybe not. I do see the issue with parking in front of that no parking sign because the people coming out of the alley can't see. But I can also tell you that 90% of the time, there's a car parked there overnight. So nobody knows that that's a no parking. So I think he's spot on saying it needs to be blocked because I've been putting a cone there so that parents stop at the end of that, but it's not clear to people, and I don't know why it's not clear, but it's not.
So is there any further comment or question regarding this situation? Otherwise, as I understand it, you want to go back and decide which way you want to be able to go?
I think I'd like to have, I need a written thing of what our 2 choices are, because honestly, with this setup and with the treatment that we've seen in the city, I don't know, maybe what if I want to sell it? Then all of a sudden I'm selling it without a parking lot again. So I just want to keep all of the school's options open because I don't want them to suffer a bad decision on my part. So I think we need both options written out to us in an email so that we can understand what they are. Because right now I'm not sure what our options are, and I'm not sure either how much each one costs. And I started this conversation with you guys in September saying it seems like a money issue, and I'm going to still go back to that because I still feel like it's a money issue.
Can we send something?
No.
Is there a recommendation that can be made here? That we want to make a motion on?
I agree with the sergeant in regards to raising the curb there to make it level so that it is one continuous load zone instead of being split up. Yeah, from 2 spaces and then the driveway and then having another space afterwards. Raise the sidewalk and make it one continuous load zone.
But I assume those spaces are used? So if you take out the curb cut, are you eliminating those spots?
My understanding, and ma'am, I don't know your name, I'm sorry.
Robin,
My understanding is that's going to be turned into a playground? Is that inaccurate?
it could be. It depends. I mean, it depends on finances, obviously, so
Got it,
it's on hold.
got it. So Director Campbell, I'm not sure that I can clearly articulate a motion to be made other than to make a motion to table this and allow Montessori staff to maybe research, seek out alternate courses of action based on suggestions given this evening.
I very much appreciate you guys putting the time in, and I very much appreciate your comment because, as I said last time, I've done my driving around, and I've seen tons of loading zones that encompass driveways. I've seen tons of places that have huge loading zones in front that I'm not even sure what they're there for. The parking authority has a huge loading zone in front. I want to know how they got it, right? Because I can't imagine what else I have to do to qualify for this. I just don't get it. If you tell me that I have to put a curb in, I'll take the expense and I'll put the curb in. Like, if that's the biggest issue here, it's not the hill I'm going to die on. But if you're telling me that I'm going to have to pay for these spots anyway, then why wouldn't I just rent the spots and keep going as we're going? That's why I'm asking you what you're suggesting I do, because it's very difficult to sift through this, but I don't want to do any more research. I'm trying to run a school.
I understand. And ordinarily, we're not the ones who create the solution for the situation.
I have a solution.
I'm trying to give you the options that provide the safest situation.
I understand that, and you had your engineer do the work, and it seems like he did a good job. He recommended something. I support that. I support what he recommended. So if you're saying that I have to put the curb in, I'll put the curb in, and then if I have to sell it, I'll take the curb out and make it a driveway again, and you can have back your loading zone.
So, is there any further discussion that might start to turn into a recommendation? I know that there was a desire for a comment from the public. Lauren?
I had the same question as Lauren had. If the curb is there, what happens to the parking spaces?
I see. The question was whether, if the curb is there, what happens to the parking spaces?
They do have access where those three vehicles are at. They do have access to the lot. No?
Mm-mm.
Oh, I thought they had.
It's 6 spots, there's 3 stacked. We don't use it because, quite frankly, it's way too dangerous for anyone to back out onto the road. It just doesn't work well. So I have never supported it for any of my employees. We have rented 6 spaces at the parking authority at the garage.
So does someone want to make a recommendation that we can run up the poll?
I'll make a motion to install the loading zone as recommended by engineering.
There's been a motion,
Second.
a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Pro and con?
I guess I would just want to make sure we clarify the times. So could it be limited?
Sure.
What would be the times that you would?
I would say 7:30 to at least 9:15, because we have a group that arrives at 9, but, and then there is a time between 11:45 and 12, the kids leave again, and then the last time that we have a big group leave all at once is like 2:45 to 3:30. So I realize it's not the greatest smattering of things.
The only further recommendation I would have, I have no problem with Ms. McCormick's motion. My suggestion to the school is use those cones and ensure parents don't block that. And the reason I'm telling you that, Robin, is my staff gets hammered by the community for parent drop-off at STOL schools. And we try to have clear communications with parents and caregivers who pick up and drop off. They don't listen. They cuss and yell at my staff, at school staff, etc. That leaves us with no other option than to make an enforcement action. That's a $75 ticket. I don't want to give a $75 ticket to parents. So if you can do your utmost to ensure that stays clear, because we're going to get the complaints, I know we will. And I don't want to get to that point where we have to take enforcement actions. If the load zone is agreed upon, and I have no issue with it, my strong suggestion is that there is literature sent home with the students or sent directly to parents. This is the load zone. This space is not the load zone.
Okay.
Is that fair?
Fair.
Sure.
So there's a motion?
There's a motion and a second.
Is there further discussion?
Yeah, we still haven't identified, I guess, the times, because I'd like to know if it's worthwhile to the parking authority to have 3 separate times with like 2-hour windows in between.
Spaces that serve the whole community, so,
2:30.
yeah. So,
So it would be worth it for you to,
yeah, if they know a start time and an end time for those 3 time periods, it would be beneficial so that those spaces can be utilized by the rest of the community and they're not drop-off time. And so that we don't have to make them 24/7 reserve parking.
I'm just not sure how many loading zones we have with 3 separate time periods on them.
I think very few, vast majority are a singular time zone.
Or I think there's some that are split too.
Yeah, there are
Yeah,
some.
but again, like, I think that the midday one was a limited number of students, is that correct?
Correct.
It is. I just worry, like, right now, it's a limited number, and my guess is it will remain a limited number, but it still could be 5 people.
And the mornings before paid parking starts.
Right.
So
Yeah.
morning's not an issue.
Okay.
It's just the afternoon pretty much.
So you can do just
What's that?
the two afternoon ones. He's saying you don't need to do a zone for the morning.
Right.
Well, no, I mean.
He's saying it doesn't impact.
Oh,
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 you're
we
saying
still
it
need to
doesn't
have
impact-
it because
Okay, I see.
folks
I
will
see.
park there overnight.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Parks will, you still have to block it, but it's not an enforceable time.
I mean, I would say potentially leave out the middle one.
Is that acceptable?
Listen, it's not optimal. We could have to, they could have to double park. I don't know the answer to that because we've always been able to get people in and out so far, but there are a limited number of kids that leave at 11:45 for half day. But we can try it.
Do have a comment. If we can go out on trial base for at least the middle of the day and see how it works for us as of now. And if we see it's becoming an issue, if we only have 2 time slots in the morning and in the afternoon, and if the middle of the day becomes an issue, we can come back and say, hey guys, we tried the middle of the day to leave it open, but it's an issue. Can we revisit at least for the middle of the day?
Okay.
We want to have a limit to that trial?
I think that, if it's okay to say so, I think that would be an issue if you're gonna make a sign.
Yeah.
You're gonna have a sign that's gonna have the first and the afternoon, and then he's gonna have to spend the time to get another sign. He's gonna have all 3 times. I mean, that's just my thoughts. That takes away you coming back, spending time, having to go through the whole process again, and then asking the parking authority to make the changes. I mean, just something to think about too.
So there's a motion on the table, there's a recommendation for having a temporary time frame, a time frame that's established but is done as a trial? Or how would that part work?
I'm not thinking of a trial, I'm thinking that it would be best to do it,
Just do it
just the 2
once a
time slots, the morning and the afternoon, because it's gonna bring more.
That's
I
the
think
thing.
it's- Yeah.
Well, I guess we can come back and do this again. It'll be okay.
So there's a motion on the table for the 2 spots and 2 time periods for
Should be fine.
the parking, requiring maintenance and administration by the school and messaging to the parents and appropriate signage.
Yeah, I guess the times are 7:30 to 9:30, and then I'm assuming 2:30 to 3:30, is that, you said 2:45, but.
Yes, dismissal starts at 2:45, so 2:30 would be good, to 4.
I guess, who's E-Day Waters?
Jason took over her position.
Okay.
Yes.
Hi, Jason. You're the.
He's the new Day Waters.
Day Waters.
So, in the memo, the email that he or she sent us for the afternoon, it said 11:45 to noon. We're going to take that out of the mix. Is that safe to say? Because that's a 3rd time span.
Yes.
And then 2:45 to 3:15, and then again 4 PM to 6 PM, indicating 15 students. Have those times changed since this email?
No, in a word, no, but most of the kids are gone at 4. So we think it's manageable from 4 to 6 to just let them park wherever they're going to park, and they're going to park in a parking spot. A lot of them park in a parking spot anyway, listen, and then they know already from me, if you park in a parking spot and you didn't pay the meter, like, you're going to get a ticket. And I guess they pay the meter. I don't know.
So, do we need to nail down times for the motion?
Yes, we do.
Okay,
7:30 to 9:30,
okay.
and then you said 2:30 to 4 now?
Mhm.
And no,
2:30 to 4 then,
and nothing from 4 to 6.
correct.
Okay, those are the times that are proposed for this motion. Any further comment? Having done that, any further questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? There you have parking.
Thank you very much.
You guys,
Thank you as well.
have a good evening.
The next item is new business. Item 46-2024, consideration of RPP study recommendations as presented at the September meeting. And Emma Hem will be giving a briefing on that as well. Thank you.
Hi there. So this is just going to be can you hear me okay? I'm hearing myself a lot. Okay.
Yes.
Is that all right? Okay. This is just going to be a quick summary of what we talked about the last Traffic Commission meeting. We had a really long presentation. That presentation was recorded. It is online, as are the PowerPoint presentations. So, but we just wanted to come back and clarify what we're recommending to move forward and ask for an official perspective from the Traffic Commission on that. So if I could get the next slide, thank you. Again, the RPP program has been in existence for some time. We have been hearing some complaints, so wanted to just take a comprehensive look at the program and make sure that we're fairly and efficiently using the parking on residential streets, making sure that we can maximize the access to parking for people in the neighborhoods. Next slide, please. So our consultant, Robert Farron, who was here last time, broke the recommendations down into 3 phases. So the first phase is more administrative changes. We would like the commission to say, yes, we're comfortable moving forward with some of these changes. Some of them are just going to require some time. There's some technology. It's just going to take us a little bit of time to work through the implementation of those and what they look like. The second phase is for a pilot program. So that would allow us to test out some of the recommendations for the program in 2 small areas where we know there have been parking challenges. And so testing out the recommendations there in 2025. So that's what we're asking for consideration on today. The third phase, which would implement changes across the program, which would potentially implement cost changes, which would change the program for most people who have RPP, potentially. We're asking to consider that at a later date. So next slide, please. So just to go through some of the phase 1 actions, these are administrative changes. So we would be looking to develop institutional use exemptions. We've heard feedback from churches that sometimes when they have special events, they're not able to get, for funerals, for example, they don't have anywhere to put people. So that would be sort of on a case-by-case basis, considering up to 5 parking permits for institutional community benefit types of uses. So we have a draft we're sort of working through on that. RPP exemptions, defining an appeal process. So if you don't like the decision that's given to you, you have a way to maybe figure out, talk to somebody else, essentially. So that's going to be more of a legal process, and we're getting legal counsel to help us review what that would look like. The application and renewal process. This is just increasing information online, making sure it's clear, concise, consistent, what the rules are. And so that'll be ongoing. We're not going to be able to there aren't going to be major changes with that probably until we completely develop the RPP program after the pilot program happens. And we are working with LPA on all of these. We've had a couple of meetings and we're just working through who's doing what. The application and renewal process, so the tiered renewal process means that instead of having to apply every year for RPP, maybe just you would have to apply every 3 years. So LPA only needs to administer to a third of the population every year. So that would just sort of cut back a little bit on, the time everybody has to spend on working through that approval process. On the enforcement side of things, LPR is license plate reading technology. So that's going to enable LPA to do administration and enforcement a little bit quicker. It's also going to give us some really good data and insight into where parking is being used and where it's not being used. We're flying a little bit blind on that right now. So that technology should really help us to understand, what's happening on the ground and where parking is really being used or not. And then demand management. So one of the ideas we have, this isn't going to be effective for everywhere in the city, but maybe for areas that are close to a parking garage, could we identify some kind of, or explore a program where residents could park overnight in parking garages, maybe helping just to relieve some of the pressure in some neighborhoods. Right now, it's much more expensive to park in a parking garage, so it's not a viable option for a lot of people. So we're looking to see if we can make something like that work. So that's phase one, and again, these are all sort of administrative processes that we're working through, figuring out the details, and that's what we'll be doing in 2025. Next slide. And then the pilot program, so this, I think this idea actually maybe came out of the last public meeting that we had. Rather than, creating all of these changes and pushing them through the whole city, we're going to start this in a couple of smaller areas, and that's how just being clear about how you become eligible for permit parking, making sure most of the residents are on board with permit parking, developing the restriction guidelines, and then redesigning the signage. That would be a pretty major undertaking as well. So next slide, I think, shows the 2 pilot zones that we had identified. The southeast zone, which is Ann Street, Plum Street, Green, Pershing, and Lime. And we know there have been a lot of issues there. And then the northwest zone in the area of James, Charlotte, Pine, and Lemon. There are a lot of new restaurants that are creating some pressures in that neighborhood as well. So we haven't talked to the neighborhoods yet. We haven't identified all of the parameters of those pilot zones. We're just asking for permission to move forward with that approach. Okay, next slide. So this is essentially the motion we're asking for to move us forward with making these changes. We would anticipate that we would come back to Traffic Commission throughout this process to provide updates and keep everyone informed of what we're working with and what issues we're encountering. Any questions or any additions?
Let me add as well that because concerns have been raised at the last Traffic Commission meeting about whether we were able to do it in the way we wanted to, we reached out to our solicitor, who confirmed that the enabling legislation for the Traffic Commission was mute about being able to do pilot programs. So we actually are going before council this evening with a resolution to allow the Traffic Commission to conduct and monitor pilot programs as necessary. This being one of them, as I understand it tonight, is even though we presented it at the committee meeting last week, tonight is considered the first reading, and then 2 weeks from now would be the second reading, which would approve it. So anything that we confirm here at the Traffic Commission would be subject to that enabling legislation that's being discussed this evening and next 2 weeks hence.
Yes. Thank you for that addition.
Any questions or comments from the commission? Any questions or comments from the public? Yes, please.
Good evening. My name is Paula Jackson. I'm a city resident on South Mary Street, former member of the Traffic Commission from 1989 to 2018, and I was involved in amendments to the program. We had an ad hoc committee and the separate rules and regulations. I was on the staff group to recommend some changes to that. I usually sat where our city engineer is sitting. But anyway, I come with a little history, and I live in a block for over 10 years that has both the daytime and the nighttime permit parking, so I have firsthand experience with that. Now, I did look at the Engage Lancaster link, and I have some questions which we're not discussing right now, but I want to get my thoughts in case I don't have an opportunity to do that at another time. I am concerned about just a couple things. Maybe a question. I think right now the petition is a requirement of 75% of the residents agree to go into the permanent parking program, and I notice that's lowered to 60%. Is there a reason for that? Maybe that's one question.
So I think there were a couple of thoughts behind that. One was that if we were doing a more data-driven approach and really determining that there was actually need, then, we're not relying entirely on resident approval. I think the other thing was that in some neighborhoods, it's easier to get 75% of residents than not. I know that, sometimes knocking on doors, people don't answer their doors. It can be difficult to connect with people. And so we thought that 60% is still a majority. Also, we're asking people to do this over a larger period or a larger area, right? So you're doing it over a minimum of 4 square blocks as opposed to just your block. So it's still really like a higher bar that we're asking people to commit to. So that was the thought process behind the 60% rather than the 75%.
The reason I asked that, some years ago, some of you may know Darlene Bird, who's pretty active, and she invited me to a South End Concerned Neighborhood meeting. This is when Garden Court Apartment was doing renovations and parking was really tight for the neighborhoods. So I went to Garden Court, met with neighbors, and I explained how the permit parking program worked at the time. And I mentioned under the program, a single-family home received 2 permits. And so if you have a teenage child and both parents have cars and the teenager has a car, you only get 2 permits. And then I mentioned if there are apartments, the requirement was 1 permit per apartment up to 5 in one building. So and we do have a lot of 2 and 3 unit apartment conversions around the city. And I've served on the commission long enough where someone would come from one apartment unit and say, well, the neighbor's not using a permit, can I have that permit? And we accommodated that, through like a special permit in the past. But so I don't know if the thought is the same. Now, I did see what was called progressive pricing structure, and maybe you can clarify that, but it looks like the first permit would be $20, the second permit would be $40, and third, if approved by the commission, would be $80. Rather than the word progressive, I was thinking punitive. Just what I know on my block, there are no options other than parking on the street. South Mary is a very short block, and if every single family home had 2 permits, we'd run out of space. There's only so many linear feet from corner to corner. So I would be concerned about even allowing a third one, but that's up to the traffic commission, I would understand. But I don't think it's appropriate. The parking is such a problem in much of the city. And I can see it because I live between West King and Manor. And on the weekends, when there is no enforcement, I can't find any place, just to unload the groceries, because, people from elsewhere are coming on to Mary Street. So I would be concerned about, people that really need to have 2 cars. We have a good transit system, but it doesn't serve a lot of needs that people have, for day-to-day commuting or doctor's appointments and so forth. So I hope that, there isn't a plan, for people that need 2 permits per household to make it a higher cost for the second permit, because it's really an essential thing that, like my next door neighbors, they really, the husband has a contract job, the wife works, at a restaurant. They both need cars, and they have no other place to park than on South Mary Street. Sometimes I see them going up to King where there's no permit parking and walking a block, to their vehicle. So those were 2 of my concerns, primarily the pricing, and I'm not sure if just reading from what's in Engage, if that's really the proposal that, to call it progressive. I don't think it's progressive, because I think it would really penalize a lot of people that really need to have 2 cars. And then, the 60%, I can understand that, but some people, if it's imposed on them, like with the Ann Street neighbors, after they heard my presentation, Darlene said, we're not interested, because people didn't want that limitation of only 2 permits per household. But with the 75%, more people are made aware of what the stipulation would be, to get into the program. So that was just a concern, with lowering the percentage. And I had some other questions, but those were the primary ones. I was concerned about change from the current program.
Well, thank you very much for that. I think part of the reason and purpose of having such a pilot would be to be able to explore such things. Well, I will say a word about the potential progressive payment plan. We're not creating new parking on the streets, so it's a limited resource. And unless there's some sort of incentive for people to think about alternative ways of accommodating themselves, whether through public parking, using other vehicles, bicycling, public transit, etc., then if there's not an additional cost to using the existing resource, there's no disincentive for people to use it properly. So, but I think that's part of what would be explored in the pilot program. Thank you very much for that. Emma, are there any other things you'd like to add?
I'll just say that if we were to increase the cost of parking, we were also looking at a low income, so that if you qualified under 80% of the area median income, or I think we were going to line it up with some other benefits that people might already be qualified for, then you would still maintain that lower $20 fee per permit. And yeah, the intent was certainly not to be punitive, but just to recognize that it is several $1,000s a year usually to maintain a car, and so a $20 difference, and that's per year. That's $20 per year, whereas, the monthly cost of parking in a garage is $75. So it's a very small difference, was our feeling, but we're also, cognizant that for low and moderate income people that might be significant. So we were going to try and give that option as well. But yeah, it's a limited resource, and it costs money to maintain, and so it's challenging for sure.
Are there any other comments or questions from the public? So my recollection is that generally speaking, people were very much in favor of being able to go forward with the pilot last time. And that's why we wanted to take the extra caution to make sure that there was no legal obstacle to the Traffic Commission conducting the pilot program. What you're asking for is for us to progress the residential parking permit recommendations as identified and as described. Do I hear any? If no further comment, do I hear a motion from the commission?
I make a motion to approve the pilot project for the RPP.
I'm assuming subject to approval from the legislation at the council.
Right, subject to approval from the council.
There's a motion. Is there a second? Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Well, we're finally moving forward with an RPP plan. Hopefully this evening, it was well received at council at the committee meeting. Hopefully we'll have no obstacle to it getting approved. Thank you very, very much. And in the meantime, as you can tell in the background, research and work is going on to figure out the logistics and how to make sure that this works properly. so that once there is the final approval from council, there should be no delay in being able to move it forward. Thank you very much for all your work, Emma, and for everyone involved in the program here. So the next item on the agenda is item 47-2024, considering the request of Celeste Serrano to restrict commercial vehicle parking in the 400 block of Poplar Street. Ms. Serrano?
Mr. Campbell, we received an email from Ms. Serrano stating she would not be able to attend this evening's meeting.
Okay, and as is our practice, we are not, without the person whom we can speak to and get more information about, we'll just table this and defer it until the next meeting.
Yes, sir.
The next item on the agenda is item 48-2024, considering the request of Chris Solt to restrict commercial vehicle parking in the 400 block of Clay Street. Mr. Solt?
Hello. Thank you very much for hearing me out. I don't know if you have the pictures that I sent in. Yeah, back in July, we noticed and started talking to some of our neighbors, seeing commercial trucks parking on our street regularly for long periods of time, overnight. I spoke with one neighbor at 403 East Clay Street that said a large commercial box truck parked in front of their house for 9 days, and they had no shade or no sun on the front of their house. So I went, I talked to Sergeant, I think it's pronounced Drace? Drace? That's you? Oh, great. Thank you. Yes, and you said, you invited me to come here and kind of plead the case and let you know what was happening. I made these flyers and made sure every resident on the street had one. Did that several times. I talked to the residents at 403 East Clay. They were so overjoyed that I was raising this as an issue. The residents of 405 East Clay Street emailed me today and expressed support for this as well. I spoke with the resident and owner of 421 and 423 East Clay, and they support this as well. I'm a resident of 425 East Clay, and we have residents here as well, the Landises, that are third generation residents on the street, and they also support this as well. Thank you for coming. So the main reasons cited are traffic and pedestrian safety. When the box trucks, and even there's a semi, an 18-wheeler, that will park at the very end of the street. There's a 5-way intersection there, and there's McCaskey students always walking by. And it's a really, I talked with one resident that said they have seen students almost hit because it creates a really bad sight line. And I've seen some of these box trucks damage trees. Giant limbs have come down, them trying to park close to the curb because the streets go right up to the road. Also, I can't imagine this being really helpful when there's snow, knock on wood, on our street. And the main issue really is safety plus access to residential parking, especially when street cleaning. We all try to comply with that to have our streets cleaned, and my wife has had to park 4 blocks away sometimes. It's just not acceptable when these are clearly not residential vehicles for residential use on a residential street. I'd also add too, I talked to one of the teachers at the school across the street, and they were wondering why there were commercial trucks being parked in the street too. The school bus sometimes comes on the 400 block and they just drop on or off. This whole year they've not been able to pull up to the curb, which normally they would. So that's another safety concern. They're not as concerned as the residents are about access because they have their own parking lot, of course. So, yes.
Thank you very, very much for the presentation. Are there, I know, Sergeant, you had spoken with the gentleman?
I did. Mr. Sultan, I spoke, Mr. Campbell. Everything he's saying is absolutely 100% correct. There are sightline issues that exist. the vast majority of vehicles that he sent pictures of do in fact meet the definition of commercial vehicles. Like the Rank plumbing truck, that's not considered a commercial vehicle.
That's good. Yeah.
So I can tell you, in patrol services, we've started making flyers prior to maybe an abandoned vehicle. This is an example. Hey, just so you know, your vehicle's out of inspection. This is what could happen. We've had good results with that. That's not to say that I'm trying to get away from this. I think it's absolutely a proper move to make this a no commercial vehicle area. What I'm saying is, once we do that, we're not immediately going to start hitting people. We're going to advise them, here's the deal, happens again, this is going to be the repercussion. So, I agree. That intersection is horrible. I'm sorry, Cindy. We've done details there. Yeah, there's stop sign violations left and right. So that's an enforcement issue that we are attempting to handle. I agree with Mr. Salt's assessment. That's why I asked him to come here. When it's appropriate, I would absolutely make a motion pending any further discussion from the board.
Thank you very much for that input. Are there any other comments or questions from the commission about this matter, this type of situation? Are there comments or questions from the public? Yes, please.
Good evening. I'm Timothy W. Landis, and I'm a third-generation owner at 433 East Clay Street, and we totally support this, and some of the other neighbors I've spoken to it, talking with Chris, it's been an ongoing issue. And the gentleman that's operating these trucks, the neighbors have approached him several times, and his comment is, it's cheaper to pay a parking ticket than it is to park his commercial vehicles in the commercial parking lot out by the old stockyards. And he laughs when he gets tickets, he tears them up. It's a joke. The other concern we have is, these aren't neighbors with a day job. They're folks that come in cars, and when they move their trucks out, back their cars in at various increments to block us from parking. Then they come back with their trucks in the evening or the next day, pull their cars out, back their trucks in. So it's more of an ongoing issue. So that's the only comment I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you very much as well. Is there any objection or any reason why it could not be made a commercial vehicle-free zone?
No, I mean, I think it's primarily residential, so it shouldn't be used for commercial vehicles.
So, did you want to be able to speak as well?
I want to say something.
Yes, please.
Yeah, my name is Jim Todd. I live at 405 East Clay Street. You referenced it, Chris. If you could put the picture back up, you had a picture initially of the intersection of Plum and Clay Street. Yeah, that one right there. So we're looking east on Clay Street here. Plum Street runs north and south. Those homes on North Plum Street, none of them have any alley behind them, no off-street parking. At 405 East Clay Street and also 403, we have no off-street parking. We have no other place to park except on the street. The problem on Plum Street is that there, I believe, are 9 houses along there, just on that stretch down to Rock Street, but only 6 parking places. And even then, you have, I think, a handicap spot, and you have people that are parking right up to the intersection, which I know is illegal. I myself am guilty of that just because I couldn't find parking spaces. So a lot of the people on Clay Street do back up to Rock Street. They have garages, they have off-street parking, but there are quite a number of us, especially near that intersection, that have no other place to park except on the street. My wife and I retired here 4.5 years ago, and when we saw the parking situation, we realized we needed to get rid of one of our cars. So we downsized to 1 car just to make it easy on ourselves and take some of the pressure off the parking on the street. So I strongly support this.
Thank you very, very much for those comments. Do I hear a recommendation or?
Yes, Mr. Campbell, I would like to make a motion pending no further discussion that the 400 block of East Clay Street be designated as a no commercial vehicle parking block.
Seconded.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion about this motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. And I think as Sergeant indicated, there'll be the signage and then there'll be the gradual messaging as well as however you're choosing to do the enforcement, Sergeant.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for the request. The next item on the new business agenda is item 49-2024. Consider the request of Kate Plank regarding pedestrian safety at North Prince Street at West James Street. Are you Ms. Plank? Is Ms. Plank here?
I would say that Ben doesn't have an update on that intersection. This has been a concern that's been raised. So even if the person's not here, I just did want to give the commission an update.
Sure, thank you. We've received numerous complaints about this intersection, particularly the south crosswalk. The intersection is skewed at an angle, and vehicles coming from Harrisburg Avenue to South Prince Street, North Prince Street, keep a high speed going around that corner. They don't slow down, and there's a yielding behavior, a challenge of vehicles yielding to pedestrians. They don't do it as required by law often, and we've gotten reports of near misses at this intersection quite a number of times. So we have applied to PennDOT to do signal phasing changes at that intersection. This memo is what was sent to PennDOT, as well as a signal permit plan and associated documents. What we are really looking to do is create a right turn phase for that approach on Harrisburg Avenue by installing a new signal head. The situation that we will have is there's a camera mounted at the intersection now that can detect vehicles and pedestrians. We are going to have the camera detect pedestrians standing in the area of that intersection. If a pedestrian is detected, they will get a red arrow on the Harrisburg Avenue approach and a walk sign for pedestrians. So they'll have a fully protected crossing. If a pedestrian is not in that area, when the signal changes, it'll turn to a flashing yellow arrow pointed right. Said vehicles will have emphasis that they have to yield to pedestrians, and an additional sign will be installed that says right turn vehicles must yield to pedestrians. So we've applied to PennDOT for those changes. Typically takes about 60 days for the review period before we can get authorization to go ahead and get the equipment up. But that's my update for you all.
Thank you very much, Ben. And that would be done, once you get the approval from PennDOT, that would be done on the administrative level. We would not come back before Traffic Commission for that.
Yes, correct.
Are there other intersections where we have this kind of device in the city?
We have the device. We installed it during our major retiming project last year. We installed these cameras at particular intersections. I think College and Marietta, we have one there. We also have one at Prince and Harrisburg, and I believe there's one more in the city, but I can't remember exactly where it's at right now. We just haven't utilized all the functionality of that camera equipment, so this is one of the features that we haven't tapped into yet, being able to recognize pedestrians. So this is the first time we're trying a signal technique like this.
Very good. Any further comments?
I would say it is similar, it's different in that we're using the detection equipment to actually determine how the signal is operating, but I would say the main intersection at King and Queen sort of functions this way in that the right turns are held. So if you're northbound on Queen, you have the through movements that go around the square. The right turns are held during that time so that the pedestrians on the east leg can go. So this is like a similar type operation where you're holding that right turn so that the pedestrians can have their own phase.
Very good.
Thank you.
Better living through technology.
Trying.
Thank you, Ben. The next, so there's no action that needs to be taken on this since we're doing it on an administrative level anyway. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is item 50-2024. Consider the request of Kelly Bocher of the Victor Yelohim International Ballet Academy to make the 200 block of West Grant a one-way street as the street is not large enough for two vehicles to pass each other, making it drop-off and pick-up time unsafe for students along with other members of the community. Is Ms. Bocher here? As this is a situation that we would require some discussion, as is our practice, we will table this item until a later meeting.
And I'd just like to say, this stretch of Grant Street has been, I think, before us at least 4 times, about being converted to one-way. And each time there's been issues, and, you know, that it would be difficult.
Thank you very much. And
We'll still need people.
and if I remember correctly, the grant changes direction and does a couple of other peculiar things, which is part of the challenge. So understanding the specific situation would be useful. Okay, the next item on the agenda is item 51-2024. Consider the request of Kevin Rolfs to add a convex mirror to the intersection of North Plum Street and Reynolds Avenue. Is Mr. Rolfs present?
This was an item that was brought to us, I think, outside of Traffic Commission. So Ben did do a review of this, provided a recommendation.
Yeah, I'll just give you a quick summary here. So at the intersection of Plum and Reynolds, there's currently no parking restrictions in place for the Plum Street side. Creates a visibility issue on Reynolds, which is a one-way coming into Plum Street. Technically, per our ordinance, there's no restriction on parking right up to the intersection when there's no traffic control device or crosswalk, and there are no crosswalks crossing Plum Street here, so that creates a clear visibility issue. The resident requested a convex safety mirror. However, we no longer install convex safety mirrors. They can create a liability issue in certain situations. So what we're looking for is just restricting parking to provide adequate sight lines at the intersection. And reviewing those sight lines, currently we have between 26 and 28 feet of sight distance with the existing lack of parking restrictions. And the recommendation here is to provide approximately 40 feet on either side of Reynolds Avenue, limited to the east side of Plum Street to provide adequate sight lines. In doing so, we'd get between 81 and 110 feet of sight distance, which should be adequate for cars to see approaching vehicles and stop properly as needed.
So looking at this particular map, this is looking south on Plum. So the left side is the east side.
Yes.
And you'd be looking at where that car currently is, up to about that, the back of that car would be restricted?
Right around that car, there should be an existing signpost. We figured on putting it on that existing signpost. I think it might be toward the back of that SUV. Yep, the one with the street sweeping sign right there. So that sign that you saw for a second would be 36 and a half feet.
I see it in front of the pink bush.
Yeah, that sign is at 36 and a half feet from Reynolds Avenue. We planned on putting the south restriction there, and then the restriction on the northern side, there's no signpost in the area, so we would just go 40 feet.
And this is something that you'll be doing administratively?
No, this is something that the Traffic Commission needs to act on because it's removing parking.
Okay.
I will say that he did provide an option of if we reduce that amount of parking restriction, you know, what the available site distance would be. It's obviously reduced, but we're looking at almost taking 4 parking spaces with this. So if we wanted to maybe.
Is there any further discussion then about what Ben has proposed?
Are you talking about restricting parking on Reynolds Avenue or on?
No, the parking restriction would just be on Plum. And one of the other issues that's not particularly relevant to the commission, but we're looking into, is that In past years, I believe in 2011, on the right side of this image, it would be on the west side of Plum Street, we constructed a curb extension, ADA ramp for a potential crossing of Plum Street. Other side of the street to the left.
That's showing the sign. We can find the sign.
West side.
Yeah, and that was never completed on the opposite side due to drainage issues and tree impacts. So we're looking on a future contract incorporating that as a part of it and getting a crosswalk in that area. If we were to do so, I think we would probably want to stick with the 40-foot parking restriction on the north side of Reynolds Avenue at least to provide adequate sight lines of the pedestrian crossing. It's tucked behind the gray Jeep right there.
Right. Any further comments or suggestions regarding this intersection?
When are we planning on finishing? Any idea?
Finishing what?
Are we talking about putting a crosswalk in there or not?
The crosswalk would likely be 2026 at the earliest.
26.
Yeah,
At the latest, you said.
latest, sure.
Is it clear what has been suggested here? Is there a desire to make a motion or to make some other suggestions?
I mean, I think it's very clear. And I guess my only concern is, do we want to let the neighbors know that we're taking 4 spaces away and give them an opportunity to comment? Or is it just appropriate for us to make the motion and move forward? And listen, I get it, this is a safety issue. And at the end of the day, safety is what trumps all. We want to keep people safe, keep, pedestrians and vehicular modes of travel safe, but I just know there's going to be an uproar, if I take 4 spaces.
Not an RDP block?
No.
I think it would be wise for the public to understand that's part of what the request would otherwise have allowed for. So his request was for a convex mirror, and we're addressing the safety situation with a different type of situation, a different solution, which I'm assuming that his request, without him being present, I'm assuming his request was to be able to not lose any parking spaces.
An assumption, but I think a logical one.
Comments, questions, suggestions?
I would tend to agree with Ms. Sargent that they do notify, because the last thing you want to do is have a group of people get really upset, and it's not fair to people that are not notified of any changes. I think that's important.
Okay.
I think it might be an easy call to make, to say we cable,
Yep,
and we put it on the next agenda,
that's correct.
being as clear as we can without being ad nauseum about it, and give folks an opportunity. If they choose to come, we can handle it. If not,
Then we go forward as,
I think so, unless somebody else disagrees.
I think that makes sense. Is everyone in agreement to?
Yeah, it's just a matter of how we're notifying.
Is the agenda an appropriate way, a published agenda? Is that appropriate, or do we throw some door hangers?
We probably have
I
to,
should do some door.
you should do some door hangers.
Okay.
Let them know.
Then I'll make a motion to table 51-24.
I'll second it.
There's been a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
No, none opposed. Let's go forward and do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Ben, we were busy this month.
Busy every month.
So then we now go into the consent agenda. There are 4 items on the consent agenda, and what we generally do is list them, and we are willing to entertain a singular motion to cover
Yes,
them.
Mr. Campbell, I would like to make a motion to accept consent agenda items 52-2024, 53-2024, 54-2024, and finally 55-2024 as published.
Seconded.
There's been a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Is there any other further additional business? We already addressed the RRTA bus routes. Hearing none, I'm willing to entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
What motion would you like?
All in favor? We are hereby adjourned. Thank you. No. No.
Little break.
So,
Definitely something.
You are.